Welcome to the Peak News. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. You're listening on AM 1460 and FM 101.1, The Answer, and you're joining us on Tuesday, which is always our government and politics day. And we're going to be talking about on the show today, well, government and politics in the form of the most hyper-local thing that we have, because as you know, if you listen to the program, we're always going for as local as we can get. 1 week ago today, we had elections for our city council. And so that's decided. We have 6 city council, 2 incumbents coming back, 4 new people. And so we're going to be reviewing those results and talking about the makeup of the city council and what that may mean for this city over the next at least 2 years until we have another city council election for our at-large candidates. What can we expect from that? And we have a special guest who knows politics very well in our region. I'll introduce her momentarily. But I want to say, because we're going to be talking about this too, voter turnout. And I don't live in the Springs, so I didn't get to vote in this election. I live in the county. But we had about 23% of registered voters in municipal Colorado Springs vote, 23%. So first of all, that means that fewer than 1 in 4 are making the decision about who is going to be the legislative body for all of the building decisions, code decisions. Oh, by the way, Colorado Springs utilities. If you have a utility bill, that's sort of important to you. And on and on and on. They decide on things and how to spend your tax money every day. And a ballot came to your house. And you had 3 weeks to mail it back in or to drop it off. And you didn't do it if you're not one of those 23%. And so, I hope that those who listen to the station are all saying, no, I voted because I'm an involved person. But folks, we got to do better, because this is not a representative democracy if you don't vote. It is representative, but it's representative of just a segment of the population that was able to mark one. And by the way, there was one, I understand because I do a voter guide. And voter guides are very complicated. There are points where we've done county and state, and we've had 70 candidates that we've had to manage, okay? There were originally 20. It got down to 18 or 17 by the time we were done because a couple people dropped out. And you only got to vote for one person in one district, and you didn't do it if you didn't vote. I'm calling you out, not because, there's any condemnation or anything. I just want you involved. So when you listen today, as we're going to talk about the makeup of things, of the city council, we're talking about elections, talking about campaigns, that you would consider that maybe when the next election comes up, and by the way, it's a big one, we got school boards coming up in the fall, that you would get more involved in some way. Because think about that. If you voted, right, it's supposed to be one person, one vote. But if you look at the percentages, if you voted in this election, you were voting for 4 people. You had that much power because of the people who, I usually say stay home, but you can stay home and vote now too. Just put it in your mailbox. So today we are covering local politics, the city council election, and being a campaign manager. And we have as our guest local political campaign manager, Jody Richie, talking about, again, the city council elections, what it's like to be a campaign manager and what we can expect from this new group that's going to be getting sworn in next week. So Jody Richie, welcome to the Peak News.
Thank you very much, Chaim. It's so nice to be here. Thank you.
It is finally. We've talked, but we've never had you on yet.
No, we've tried to do this for a while now.
Yeah, and so Jody, and she'll say, as we're talking about the candidates in the next segment, who she represented, who she consulted with, who she was managing, because she's known as probably the preeminent campaign manager here, the people who call, and you'll hear her name a lot. I know when I'm dealing with the voter guide and the candidates, I'm sending stuff to her a lot because she's their rep. And so she has to know the policies, she has to know the arguments, she has to know the people, she has to know who they're running against. And so I thought it was wonderful to bring her on for that review. We are also going to be talking about at the very end, if you're thinking about running for office, and I think you should, for school board possibly, the top 5 things to consider before running for office. Before we go to break, I want to promote something that's coming up that's very near and dear to me. We do events here at the Peak, but I've been doing a Passover Seder in the Springs for the past 3 years. We're doing it this year at the Pinery, at the beautiful Pinery. We want you to join us. It's on Thursday, April 17th, but the cutoff date for registering is this Thursday, April 10th. So for more information and to register before the cutoff, go to thepeak.news/events for all the information, and we hope that you'll join us there. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman, and we'll be right back with Jody Richie. Cool.
I can't hear myself.
Okay, where the wire is, there's a volume.
Okay, and that's for me to be able to hear myself, right?
Well, you'll hear everything. Were you hearing me?
I was hearing you, but I couldn't hear myself very well.
That's weird because when you spoke, I heard you.
Okay, well, that's fine. I'm glad somebody did.
So I think it's just the volume that's going to solve it there.
I'll try that again.
Okay. So if you're hearing now, if we don't hear you, that means they don't have your mic up.
Right.
But I heard you.
Okay.
So
that's the best thing.
Okay.
Yes.
So a couple more.
Because I'm not sure whether I'm talking too deep or too high or not enough inflection or.
Okay. So it sounded great to me. So a few things. This mic has a very close pickup pattern, so you stay on top of it. As I told you, and more of an intensity because it's just voice, but also all emotion and everything needs to be vocalized, right? So because it's like radio
normally
theater.
I don't have a problem with that. Some people try to say, calm down.
Okay, so that's good stuff. So bring that because like I'll talk with my hands, but I understand that I'm channeling it into my voice, right? Everything, because everything is voice here in this format. As I told you, wrap it up. That means 10 or 15 seconds, land the plane, give it back to me. If you ever hear music, 30 seconds from the commercial. So finish up and get it back to me so I can throw. When we do, not this segment, but the next segment, where you're monologuing, so I'm not going to interrupt you. You'll have about 4 minutes. So I'll give you 3, 2, 1, and then this means 30 seconds because a wrap up is too short to put a final chapter on it. So that'll give you, as you see the time cues, pace yourself through your material and figure out how you can hit all of your points going through. If you come up short, I'll ask a follow-up question, but try to fill it in, all the way through if you can. 4 minutes is a long time. It can be, or it can go by really quick. So, it really depends on how much content you have. And lastly, if other than that, with the 4 minutes, if you ever see me hold up a finger or two, I'm giving you a time budget for that answer. So I'll say take like another minute. I'm not saying because I don't want you to stop talking thinking I'm talking. 1 minute, 2 minutes. 2 minutes. That's me giving you basically a time budget so you can judge yourself and hand it back to me. The reason that I have people in the studio and don't do phone for our main guests, sometimes I have call-ins, is because there's no way to comfortably move back and forth. There's no energy. You're always having to interrupt the person because they're just going.
Sure.
And so this allows us to keep things, comfortable and moving. But if, for me, if I say wrap it up, it's because I know my time budget and I want to make sure we get to all the questions before we finish up. So,
right.
So, in these things, like when we're going through this review, we have a minute. Obviously it's a 10-minute segment. We're trying to cover, 6 candidates. So there you can do the math on that. Yeah, right. But you're going to have about a minute, to make a comment about each one if you want to take that long. And then overall, and I'll read the 3 other names of the people who are there, so let's go through each candidate, what you think about them. And then we'll finish up the last couple minutes of this segment talking about the council as a whole, how you think they're going to be.
And I can be as biased as I want to.
As you want to.
Okay.
You're speaking
Good. Okay.
Yep. I mean, and if you're being biased, speak, remind people of your background. And
I'm going to say that first,
okay.
I think. Yeah.
Welcome back to the Peak News. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. You're listening to us on Tuesday, which means it's government and politics. And we have with us for the hour as our guest and co-host Jody Richie, who's a local political campaign manager, who is very often in races, is working for multiple candidates. And so she needs to know the issues. She needs to know the competition. She represented three candidates in this city council election. And so we're going to, as we did last Tuesday, we're going to tell you who won in case you don't know. But then I've asked Jody to do a review of the candidates from her perspective. And then at the end, we're going to talk about the council as a whole and how Jody thinks that that they may be voting and legislating over the next 2 years. So, Jody, just before we do, because you're speaking as a private citizen, but also as a campaign manager, and we like to do what on the show called transparent bias, so people know. So set the context for where your reviews are coming from.
Very clearly, I am a conservative Republican. I make no beans about that. I work only with Republican candidates. I know that there are other campaign managers who work with good candidates, but I will only work with Republicans.
Now, officially, this is a nonpartisan election, but we know that that's sort of a fake.
Okay, well, my take on that is the position that they're running for is nonpartisan. The candidates are not nonpartisan. They belong to something. They have to be a registered voter. So they're going to either be unaffiliated or they're going to be affiliated with a political party. Period.
Okay, and you work with those who are only affiliated with the Republican
Yes,
Party? Okay,
yes.
So that's our context here. So in District 1, incumbent Dave Donaldson won 58% of the vote.
Right.
Dave's been a councilman for the past 4 years. Sort of an outlier a lot of the time. What do you think of Dave?
In the interest of fair disclosure, I was his campaign manager the first time that he ran, and I was his consultant this time.
Okay.
So I come with a little bit of bias there, but I am transparent about it. Honestly, from my perspective, I think he has been a good councilman. I think he asks the tough questions that other people don't want to ask. And that has been very popular in his district. When he went to bat for 24-24 out at Garden of the Gods, people appreciated him asking those tough questions, and he represents the people. He is very, very passionate about representing his district and the people in that district.
Okay.
So I think he deserved to win, and I'm not surprised that he won.
Okay, District 2, Frank Krissinger dropped out, so Tom Bailey ended up running unopposed, got 100% of the vote.
I'm not sure what else to say about that.
But do you know about him as a candidate and what you...
Not very much. I know he's a Republican. As a matter of fact, there are 4 new Republicans on the city council. We'll talk about that in a little while. I do know that he's a good Republican. I've heard him speak. Other than that, I don't know a lot about him.
Okay.
Only because he was unopposed. So.
Okay, District 3, which is Southwest Colorado Springs and downtown. Brandy Williams with 37.5% of the vote. Pretty close race, only a few percentage points behind the next candidate.
Yeah.
So what do you think of Brandy?
Well, again, I was Brandy's campaign manager when she ran for county commissioner, and I was consulting on this campaign with her. Okay. And I am so glad that she won this race. It was very tight. What started out when the first numbers came back in, she was about 5% ahead, and that's dropped to 3%. So I'm excited for her. She deserves to be on city council. She is a civil engineer, and so that will bode well for the issues that come before the council.
Okay, District 4, Southeast Colorado Springs, Kimberly Gold, 39% of the vote. Pretty solid win, 9 points ahead.
Yeah, 9 points ahead. I met Kim Gold. Actually, she and I were in the same Rotary Club for a while. Okay. And because of her schedule, she had to drop out. I'm going to try to get her back because I think she's a good addition to the
How is she
club.
registered?
She's a Democrat.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I think that she represents her district well, and we'll talk about that later on.
Okay. Incumbent in District 4, Central Colorado Springs, incumbent Nancy Henjum, 49% of the vote. There were 3 other candidates running, ended up splitting the vote, but still, that was a tough one. Nancy Henjum.
Well, and I have met Nancy
Definitely a Democrat.
Yes, she's definitely a Democrat. I have met her a couple of times. As a matter of fact, she sat at one of my tables at an event, and we had a pleasant conversation. I think she's very nice. I think the sad thing about some of these races is you have so many people running that they do split the vote. And so I think that perhaps with those splits, you don't get a good sense of a good race. I think she does represent her district.
Okay, I mean, if she, if there was only one other candidate, who knows what would have happened? May have been
Exactly.
a very close race.
Yes, it would have been much closer.
But we don't know. Okay, and finally, District 6, Roland Rainey won with 42.5% of the vote. Parth Melpacum behind by about 6 points on disclosure. Roland is actually a sponsor of the Peak through his Mayweather
Right.
boxing and fitness gym. So wanting you to know that. We had Roland on last Tuesday also here.
Yeah. I was his campaign manager, and I can tell you this was a tough race. It was a tough race. And he ran for at-large 2 years ago and did not win. Not surprising. There was, 9 or 10 people in that race. And he worked very hard, and he will represent that district. That district, District 6, is for the most part very conservative, and he is a conservative Republican.
And that's in Northeast Colorado Springs, District 6.
Yes.
So overall, and we have, let's see, I'll just bring this up to remind the those who are on the council, David Leanweber, Lynette Crow-Iverson, Brian Risley, they all won in the at-large election 2 years ago, so they stay on. So those are there's 9 candidates. So there are 9 council members, 6 representing District 3 at-large. And there was a special election last time that Michelle Tallarico won, but she decided not to run again. So that's why that district was open. So what happened with the council as far as affiliation? Did it shift conservative in this race? Where are we here with all of these new people? Because it was surprising that Randy Helms didn't run again. Michelle, like the incumbents, which is not normal, didn't decide to run. So we have a lot of new people. How do you see the council now as opposed to what it's been?
Well, of course, Dave Donaldson is a Republican, and he's always been a Republican, so I don't think there'll be too much change there. In District 3 with Brandy Williams, now she's a Republican. We did not have a Republican in that seat, and I think that's an advantage to our city. I think that in District 6 with Roland Rainey, I think he will be much more engaged as a member of the city council than the previous councilman.
Okay, and so when it comes to certain types of votes, and people run on these policy positions, how do you see big things like utilities and buildings, skyline, this whole controversy that's been there over the marijuana, rec marijuana? How do you think that's going to be handled by this council? I mean,
well, of the 4 new council members, not one of them is pro marijuana. I can tell you that. Mm-hmm. So if the vote comes up, I would imagine that they will vote their district, and I'm always keen on that. If you're running in a conservative district, you have to remember that you are representing conservatives. If you're running in a liberal district, you have to remember that you are representing left-leaning people, mm-hmm. and you have to do that. And that's why I like Kimberly Gold. I think she will be a good representative for her district. I cannot in any way conjecture about how these people are going to vote. I just know that based on Republican values, I think you're going to see a shift to the right.
Because of especially with the Brandy.
Yes,
coming
with
in.
Brandy. Mm-hmm.
Coming in.
Yeah.
So what does that give us as far as numbers? Because Lynette Crow-Iverson is there. Leanweber is interesting. I don't know what to consider him as far as as voting. But overall, it seems that just like with the country, not with our state, but with the city, that there's been a conservative shift.
Yes, I think there
election.
has. Yes,
okay.
I do think there is.
Okay. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. We're here with Jody Richie, local campaign manager. We just reviewed the city council. When we come back, and I brought this up at the beginning, that there was fewer than a quarter of eligible voters voted. Jody's going to be talking about why people don't vote. We'll be right back with The Peak.
Was that better?
Yeah, it was great.
Inflection?
Yeah, it worked.
Because it's not monotone?
No, it was good.
Like monotone.
No, you're doing, okay. I mean, you're a talker, so So you're
Yes, I am. As a matter of fact, all through school, the notes on the grade cards were, Jody would just quit talking.
there. But that's why, I turn it into a radio gig. Good. Okay, no, that was very good.
Good.
Thank you. So you have about 3 minutes if you want to review your notes and things like that. And
Yeah.
again, this is your 4-minute monologue where I won't break in or ask any questions or whatever. So
God's
it's just
again.
for you.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
just for you to, well, if you have enough of your bullet points there, just talk from and pace yourself. But
All right. Talk slow.
no,
Well, you stole some of my thunder
what?
in the beginning, talking about how only 23% voted.
Okay, well,
I'm just going to repeat it.
well, that was a setup. That was a setup for you. That was setting the context for the show.
Yes.
No, I called people out when,
I do too.
When
If
it
someone
happened.
complains to me, I say, did you vote?
Right.
If they don't vote, why are you complaining?
Was that 23% of the people voted and 100% complained? Right?
Right. Well, and I can talk about this too. One of the things that I do is I scour social media because that's one of the avenues that I can keep my eye on things and ear to the ground sort of thing. And people just complaining bitterly about the crime and about this and that. And I go out there and I say, so did you vote? Elections have consequences. I mean, you can't just sit back. This stuff doesn't happen by
No,
magic,
right.
It's hard
No, I
work.
mean, any of these races obviously would have pivoted on more people voting differently if they voted differently.
Maybe that may be. I mean, that's one of the things that I know. They haven't come out with the final numbers yet, so I haven't done any analysis. But I know in District 6, when Mike O'Malley ran, 19% turnout, and that's a conservative district. 19. That is sad.
I know. I just think it's always following a presidential election, the district one.
Right.
And I think people are just burned out.
Could
And then
be.
they're burned out.
Could
And that's
be.
why I was talking. Jason Lupo is a friend of mine, and he does radio show here. He's a sponsor of the Peak too.
Yeah.
And he was saying this thing. He believes it should get moved to the county election time.
I
and
agree with that.
not be separate.
Well, first of all, it would be cheaper.
Right.
We're going to have a school board election in November anyway,
Right.
so we've paid for this twice this year. Taxpayers have paid for 2 elections.
And obviously, people don't want to vote this close to the presidential election. It always gets low. turnout.
having knocked on thousands of doors, I always get there's an election in April.
No, but how do people don't? I ended up finding out because we launched church voter guides 4 years ago for this election.
Yeah.
And after doing it for 4 years, I realized what a blessing it was because it's the smallest election. It's one set of questions. It's one race.
Right.
It's only 15 or 20 candidates.
Right.
If we had started differently, I don't know that we would have done it. Welcome back to the Peak News, where we say the quiet stuff out loud. We don't lie to you because, there's just, the market's flooded with that. We could never compete in that market. So we decide that we just, want to bring good information, put it in context. And in fact, I'm learning more and more that we're not the purveyors of truth. You shouldn't look to the media to be truth. We should give you facts in context, give you as much reference. But the person who decides what's true, I'm not talking about ultimate truth like God. I'm talking about what matters to you isn't for me or any news person to determine. So think about the media differently. I would challenge you to do that. Well, we have Jody Richie, local political campaign manager, and I've asked her to talk about something she's passionate about. And as we brought up at the beginning of the show, there was very low voter turnout for this Colorado Springs City Council election. And so Jody's going to talk about why people don't vote. Jody Richie.
Well, I don't know that I can actually talk about why they don't vote, but let's talk about the voter turnout. And you had mentioned it earlier. We had 23.55% turnout in this city council election. 23%. So that is 332,000 ballots were sent out and only 78,000 were returned. I'm not sure how much easier we can make it other than hiring teams of people to go around from house to house and pick up ballots. They're mailed to you. There are, I can't remember how many ballot boxes there are around the city for you to drop them in.
30 something.
Yeah, 30 something. You can mail it in. If you don't want to spend a stamp, then you just drop it in a box somewhere. I'm flummoxed by the low turnout in this city. Now, even in the mayor race, that was a pretty hot race 2 years ago. And even in that race, it was only 29% turnout. I'm just, I don't know what to say to that. When I have knocked on thousands of doors over the years working on campaigns. And one of the things that I hear is that people say their vote doesn't count. And what I am now saying to them is, have you ever heard of Rebecca Kelty? In House District 16, she won by 3 votes. I was there for the watch. I spent 6 days in that room as a watcher. And I have no problem with the integrity and the honesty of that election at all. She walked in there. This is very interesting. I hope I can divert a little bit. So it was very interesting. She went into that race 7 votes ahead. The morning of the announcement, it was a dead heat. It was even. And we were all just flabbergasted. And through the last adjudication, that's where she picked up 3 votes. So don't tell me your vote doesn't count. And then there was some years ago, there was an election in Manitou Springs where there was an election won by 1 vote. Longinos Gonzalez, who was our county commissioner for District 4, his first primary election, he won by something like 32 votes after the recount. Don't say your vote doesn't count. It counts. It's very important. And one thing, this is my favorite saying, it's by Pericles. Just because you do not take an interest in politics doesn't mean politics won't take an interest in you. So even if you don't vote, that non-vote is being used by someone in some analysis for some campaign. The difference is that you don't have a voice. You've given up your voice. And I just, I want people to vote. This is what we're all about. This is issues that come up for the city council. And we won't even talk about other areas, but cities that come up or issues that come up to the city council usually have to do with utilities or land use, and they directly impact all of us every day. And you don't know, you had mentioned it earlier when we were chatting, that if there was a higher voter turnout, there might have been different results. Everyone should think about that.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about voter confidence and how that's been eroded,
it has been eroded. And I think Steve Schleicher, who our clerk is right now, he's done a good job of trying to reestablish any kind of confidence in voting. What I also hear is people talk about how they don't have any voter confidence or they don't have any confidence in our voting because of what happens in Pennsylvania. But we're not in Pennsylvania. We're not in Arizona. We're not in Georgia. We're in El Paso County. And I think people need to think about home, what that means at home.
Hi, I'm Goldman the Watchman. We have Jody Richie, local political campaign manager, with us for the hour. When we come back, we're going to be talking about life as a campaign manager. What does it take to do that job? What should you look for if you're running for office in a campaign manager? Hi, I'm Goldman the Watchman, and we'll be right back with The Peak after this quick news break. Cool. So we're on number 4, page 4.
Page 4.
Page 4, segment 4.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, dear.
Wow. That's a lot of people. Okay. Let me go ask them a question.
I'm good. I'm all flushed.
More details at srnnews.com.
Want a smarter way to renovate your kitchen or bath than this? Whoa! Then don't let anyone smash up anything with
Okay, we're back in 10. Welcome back to the Peak News, where we say the quiet stuff out loud and trying to say it louder and louder and louder every day as you join along with us. So we would ask this of you as a listener, please tell others about us. We're grassroots. We don't have big budgets. We're volunteers around here, and we're trying to cover an entire region. So we would love to have you, just tell others about us so we can grow our listening audience. But if you would like to tell stories, we'd love to have your help. And we have citizen journalists and interns here, and we'll train you on how to do that, credential you, and send you out to tell the stories that are important to you. But you got to be a journalist. We're not here. We don't need more activists. We don't need more influencers. We don't need more paid professional or free professional liars. We need people who care about the community. And if that's you, please go on thepeak.news, look at our citizen journalism page, fill out the form. We'll be in contact with you regarding that. And love to have you join us. We want to build out a large volunteer news organization here so that we can get the information that we need accurately and bring trust back to our media. So this is Government and Politics Tuesday, and our guest is Jody Richie, local political campaign manager. And Jody, thanks so much for being on the program and for helping us understand, about the candidates that are going to take over city council. I believe they're sworn in on the 15th.
Yes.
In a week. So that's really quick after Election Day. 2 weeks and the city council is in, very quick.
Yep.
You've been in politics for 20 years and been doing campaign managing for about a decade. How'd you get involved in that? How'd that get started?
Okay, first I have to disclose I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up.
Okay, fair enough.
So I have been on some great journeys, and I think I am where I'm supposed to be right now. I really do believe that. I started out working in financial institutions. I worked for the U.S. Army for a while when I lived in Germany. I was in sales and marketing, manufacturing, operations. And I think if you put all that together, maybe that's what makes me effective, at least some of the time. And so I got involved in 2004 when George W. Bush was running for re-election, and he was running against John Kerry. And I said, no way can John Kerry be our next president. So I was living in Pueblo at the time, walked into Republican headquarters, and I said, do with me as you will, I'm here. And I spent the time mustering troops for walking, making phone calls, doing whatever I had to do to help him win. The big lesson that I took away from there is all politics is local. The local races are the important ones. And that's what I tell people when I'm knocking on doors. They'll always ask me, what about this report that was on Newsmax or Fox News? And they're always talking about the national level. And I remind them it's the local race that's important. That's the one that we feel every single day. So that's how I got started. And then in 2005, I was elected the secretary of the Pueblo County Republican Party. Then I moved to Colorado Springs, became a district chair, and walked again thousands of doors. I started doing voter analysis, which is kind of a little bit of my background, and managing phone banking. Oh my gosh, everything. And then in 2015, State Senator Larry Liston came to me and he said, I would like you to be my campaign manager when I run for House District 16 again. And I said, oh my gosh, I would love to. I have no idea what I'm doing. And he said, it's okay. I really want your organizational skills. So that's how I got started. And it's just been word of mouth. I don't think I've ever called a candidate and say, hey, I want to be your campaign manager. It's just word of mouth and reputation. And that's my mission and my passion is to elect good Republicans to office.
Okay. So when someone chooses to run for office, very often they decide they don't need a campaign manager. They're going to do it themselves. Obviously, you're biased for this, but you've seen both sides. And sometimes people are able to win. But overall, whether it's you or anybody else, why would you advise a candidate to get a campaign manager, and what tends to happen when they don't?
Well, I think the bottom line there is they're in a forest. And they're in the middle of that forest and trees. Okay. So they're in the middle of the forest. They can't see the trees. They need someone who is outside of themselves to be able to see the trees, to be able to see which way to navigate, which messaging, there's so many things that go into that. And if you're doing it yourself, first of all, as a candidate, you have two jobs. And this is pretty straightforward. You have two jobs: meet people, get money. That's it. And if you're doing anything else, then you're not doing your job as a candidate. And if you are managing your own campaign, you're doing too many other things rather than meeting people and getting money. That's it.
Does the campaign manager ever do the fundraising along that, or?
Campaign manager, and I organize fundraisers. I try to get the people together who will give money, but it's the candidate that they want to talk to. I would never make a fundraising phone call on behalf of a candidate. People don't want to talk to a campaign manager. They want to talk to the candidate. Why should I give to you?
So what are the qualities of a good or a great campaign manager if people are thinking about getting one or being one? What have you seen that's most important?
A great deal of patience. I think that's the very first thing. You have to have a lot of patience. You have to be 1000% trustworthy, because these candidates are going to confide in you as a campaign manager. They have to know, no matter what they say or what kind of attitude they have, that it's going to stay between them and the campaign manager. I think that is probably the most important part. If a candidate cannot trust a campaign manager to say anything that they feel necessary, they shouldn't have that campaign manager. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, what else?
Trust. I think a good knowledge of the community and the districts. So you've got districts, and not just city council districts, but county commissioner districts and state house districts. You need to have a good idea of the makeup of those districts and the demographics and what kind of a candidate would be a good fit to that district. That's one of the first things, and we're going to talk about that. If you have a very conservative candidate, and that very conservative candidate is running in District 4 in the city council, they will never win, because that is not a conservative district. And again, if you had Kim Gold, for instance, and I do like her, I met her and I really like her. If she was trying to run in District 1 or District 6, she wouldn't win. Those are conservative districts. And so you've got to have a candidate. And when I meet with a new candidate, we go through an interview process. That the candidate to me and me to the candidate, to make sure that we're a good fit. And I have talked people out of running, and I have declined a couple of campaigns because, let's face it, I'm going to put a lot of my time and energy and loss of sleep into making sure that candidate wins. If they don't stand a chance of winning, let's move on.
I've heard of candidates that are, talked out of, they want to be pro-life, but they're told it's not popular, like we were told in the last election. Republic, we're going to lose on those issues. How much should a campaign manager really determine or help determine, the policies, the platforms, or are you there to really just amplify that candidate and get them out there? How much influence should you have in molding them as opposed to just getting them in front of the public in a great way?
I think that the campaign manager should have a lot of input into where they are. I'll give an example. A few years ago, I represented a candidate who was very far Christian right. And I said to that candidate, I appreciate it and I'm right there with you, but you cannot wear that on your sleeve during campaign. You cannot. And that candidate agreed. I realized that I can't. And he won that election. But he never compromised his values. He just didn't wear them on his sleeve. I think people expect a certain amount of secular platform when you're running. There are a lot of people I know who are Christian right, who do not believe that religion has a place in politics. And I think that everyone can have their own values. I have very strong values. I think that in some instances, it's better if you don't address those values in a campaign. And that's pretty blunt, but it is.
Okay. What's the process as far as working with you? You mentioned there's an interview, but if someone wants to work with you, give us a little bit more about the process.
It's very simple. You either call me or email me. And I do get a few phone calls. I've got quite a few candidates next year already lined up. And I'm really excited about that. They can call me, they can email me, Jody Richie at Comcast.net. I will be glad to talk to them. There are people that I talk to and give them advice, and they go off in a different direction, maybe with a different campaign manager. That's fine with me. Sometimes I will advise them, maybe this is not the race for you. Let's wait 2 years. I see people who want to get into a race 2 months before the election and think that they're going to win. And I'll advise them, wait 2 years, start campaigning now.
Okay, and let's talk about that. We have about a minute left. School board elections coming up.
Yes.
If someone's thinking about doing that, is it too late or
They
time to get in?
Well, it's time to get in now. It is time. And it doesn't mean that they necessarily have to declare, but they need to start attending events. They need to start making themselves visible to the people of the district they're running in.
Okay.
That is paramount.
Okay, you can get in touch with Jody. Again, Jody Richie, JodyRichie at Comcast.net. Last 30 seconds, encouraging people who maybe are thinking about running for anything.
Encouraging them.
Yeah.
Maybe therapy would be a first place to start. I don't know. Encouraging them. I think first of all, you have to have a conversation with your family. If family is behind you, that is number one. And then number two, if you are a good fit for your district, if you're the kind of candidate who is driven to win, you have to be those things.
Okay, when we come back on The Peak here with Jody Richie, we're going to be continuing to talk about things to consider before you run for office. You're listening to The Peak. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman, and we'll be right back.
Any hints?
Okay, so you started going into those points. So we did a little bit of a
did.
crossover. That's okay.
It's okay.
We
I
just
will reiterate them.
Okay, so
Yeah.
do you have 5? Are they 5 points, 6 points? Do you have?
Well, it's the family.
You want to write
Yeah,
maybe?
okay.
Make sure you have it.
Yeah, hang
Down
on
there.
a second.
We have 3 minutes.
Family. Oh, okay. We have.
So first is family.
Yes. I'm trying to think what would come next. Not necessarily in this order. Fit for the district.
Right. Okay. Third.
Drive to win.
Okay. Fourthly.
You need a volunteer. You need a base. They have to have their support base.
Support base.
Yeah.
Okay, and fifthly. Willingness to ask for money unless you're personally wealthy.
Well, I have had some people who self-fund.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I do.
And I disagree with that. I don't think they should, because people watch that, and if nobody is donating to you, are you really a good candidate?
Okay.
If nobody's willing to come to your aid and support you
Okay.
monetarily,
So willingness to fundraise.
yeah.
Okay. So what we're going to have here is last time you just gave headlines, but now you'll have about 30 seconds or so to comment about each one of these.
Okay.
To fill in what you mean by it.
Okay.
And I need to be out by 5 minutes in. So when we get close to the end, because I want to have time to, again, give your email address and things like that.
Okay.
So, cool. It's more comfortable than you thought. You're okay?
A little bit, yes.
Okay.
A little bit. Yeah. I can go off.
All right.
So
That's okay. As long as we land on time, it's okay.
I'm not monotone. Am
No,
I?
it's good.
Okay.
No. It's
good.
not, it's dynamic. That's not
Good.
okay. So family, fit for the district, drive to win, support base, and willingness to fundraise.
Yes.
Okay, cool. See, that's a blog post for you right there. You can.
It is.
You could.
It
you
is.
could
Yeah.
okay, we're back in 30.
Oh.
Yeah. Here we are. Welcome back to the Peak News. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. You're listening on Government and Politics Tuesday, and we're spending the hour with Jody Richie, local political campaign manager. And in this segment, just in case, and we started to touch on it in the last one, but we'll go a little more in depth here, top 5 things to consider before running for office. And then, of course, we'll finish with Jim Miller, who just ran for mayor, ran for city council. Jim is out there. Some people not so happy, spoiling, possibly splitting the vote, but he's getting out there. He's doing something. So, it's always a double-edged sword. But Jody, what are the top 5 things that people to count the cost, and make sure that they're actually ready to throw their hat in the ring?
Sure. One of the first things I tell a candidate is that this is the hardest thing you will ever do. It is hard. It is hard physically, emotionally, mentally. And I actually had a candidate who, it's kind of funny, a little funny story, who relayed to me a story of this person's life. And it wasn't very nice. I mean, there was some tragedy in there. And he said, that's not a problem. I can deal with this. And about 2 months before the general election, he called me and he said, boy, when you said this was the hardest thing I was going to do, you were not lying. I had no idea. So I think the first thing you have to do is make sure your family is behind you. If your family is not behind you, I think that obviously that is going to be a hindrance to you. This is going to be much harder on the family members than it is on the candidate, because they're going to have to listen to things that may not be very complimentary to their loved one. And they're going to be gone a lot because they're going to be out in the public. They're going to be attending events.
Okay, number 2.
Number 2, you have to be a fit for the district. And we talked about that earlier. If you're a very conservative candidate and you want to run in a very liberal district, you're not going to win. And why would you put your own resources into something that you're not going to be successful at? Set yourself up for success, not failure.
Okay, number 3.
Number 3, you have to have a drive to win. If a candidate is not driven, and I've seen candidates at the very end of a campaign, they just crash and burn, and they lose. They're not going to win. It's rare that they do. You have to have a candidate who, in words that were given to me some time ago, before their feet hit the floor in the morning, they have to say, what can I do today to get myself elected? And
we saw a couple dropped out of this election,
yes.
of the city council election. Yes. They decided after they were in that it wasn't
it's
what
hard.
They wanted to do.
It's hard.
Okay, fourthly.
You have to have a support base. I've seen people come into an election and they have absolutely no support base. They don't have a good collection of friends and family and supporters that are willing to back them, to volunteer for them. They don't have a donor base, and we'll talk about that in a minute. They don't have a good donor base. You've got to have these things in order to be a good, successful candidate.
So is there a number? Is there how do you figure out if it's big enough, if it's strong enough?
Oh my gosh. Well, I've seen support. Well, I'll put it this way. If you can only muster 10 people, there's only going to be 2 or 3 of those people who are actually going to step up and work for you. So I would say if you can come up with maybe 50 people, because then you might be able to get 10 who are going to be consistent.
So for a local race.
For a local race. Yeah, for a local race.
Okay,
yes.
And last, number 5 of the things to consider before running for office.
Willingness to fundraise. This is really kind of interesting because people hate asking for money. And I have done fundraising for different things, for nonprofits and such. And in sales, you make phone calls, and it's not for fundraising, it's for sales. And you do that. But it's interesting because I have seen people be a little offended if they're not asked for money, because their attitude is, why didn't you ask me to donate? What's the matter with my money? I really wanted to donate to you. You have to ask. If you don't ask, you don't get.
Okay, you need to introduce me to some of those people for our nonprofit foundation. I'd love the people who will complain if I don't ask them for money. Thank you very much. Well, we've been spending the hour with Jody Richie, local campaign manager. You can get in touch with Jody at her email, Jody, Jody, Richie, Rachie, at Comcast.net. Jody, thanks so much for joining us on The Peak.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I certainly enjoyed it.
And now, Jim Miller, someone who's well acquainted with running for office, Jim Miller and The Peak Rant, and he's talking about why Colorado Springs isn't what it used to be.
Just a guy.
Yeah.
Are we still hot?
What?
Is the mic still hot?
Not well, going out on the
Okay.
going out on the yeah.
So
It's always on the stream until we're done.
when Jim was speaking at the Sunrise Republican Women Forum, it was so cute because he gets up, just a guy, etc.
Right.
And I had people say, "Gosh, if I was in his district, I might vote him because he's really funny." And I said, "Yes, he is the entertainment."
Yeah, he is. And that's what he is here, and that's what he's been. But he did okay, and it's refreshing because with Jim, what you see is what you get, and that's what we're not used to in the political realm.
But I've heard him speak in a normal voice. He's got a good voice. He's got good things to say. But I think that I don't know whether this is compensating for a lack of self-confidence. How people will put that, they'll have a wall or they'll put on a mask. Because I do think it changed a few things. He could be a formidable
Maybe talk to him.
candidate.
Talk to him. I no. I think I don't think it's an act. I mean, I've known Jim for a couple of years now,
Yeah,
and
me too.
I work with him.
Yeah.
And I tried to when he first came in and we were doing these rants, and whenever you're a campaign manager, I'm a producer. So when I'm working with someone,
Yes.
you got to figure out how do you bring them out into the modality? How do you take them and translate it into whatever the communication form is? So
Right.
so how do we bring Jim on the radio? Originally, I was going to have Jim host the rants and maybe do one occasionally, but he had so much content. I said, could you do this? And he's been doing it for over a year. But I said to him, make some notes, or I tried to manage him,
Right.
and it shut him down.
Really?
Because he's a spontaneous, he's more of a free form
Yeah.
kind of person.
Good.
So like he went from being like hilarious and just very natural to it was too controlled because he's sort of animalistic. Jim is he's a street guy. I mean, he's a street person, and so he's a common guy and working man. And so I had to but I said, Jim, but it has to have this level of quality, and there's certain you have 2.5 minutes, and you can't just keep saying the same thing over and over because sometimes he'd end up just circling back to fill the 2.5 minutes. And so working over time to find out how he is best managed and thrives best and produces the best content. But I don't see it as an act. I mean, all men put on a level of bravado, but I don't.
Well, everybody does.
Yeah, I don't.
So,
I don't see. No, I don't. I mean, I've known him for a while. Jim's really pure, and I think we just might be so used to people doing that I'm not.
But he's so pure, he's unelectable.
Well, they say that.
He's
So-
unelectable. And I'm sorry about that. And maybe he needs to. Maybe this is a path into more public speaking, more public. I don't know, exposure. Maybe that's where he needs to be. Maybe that's in the end where he should
But
be.
it's interesting. I mean, as a campaign manager, and I asked you that question, I didn't follow up on it, and we are still, we're streaming. So,
Right.
but about a minute and a half. That thing of, well, you're pro-life, but don't talk about it.
Right.
There are people that would say that's not right, Jody. But you're saying, hey, I'm trying to get a person in office.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
But the other people like Jim and stuff say, hey, we're going to be who we are, and hopefully eventually we won't have to be competing against fakes, and be fake ourselves, and we're going to stand on our principles, and eventually we're going to win. Unfortunately, it tends to lose in this world if you don't play a middle ground that isn't really you.
Well, and I think honestly, that's what most voters are looking for is somewhere more in the center. They don't want extreme left or right. They want more center because that's where I think where the good decisions are made, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Huh.
And I
You know-
probably didn't explain, maybe I didn't explain the values part correctly because it's something you just can't wear on your sleeve. It doesn't mean you give them up. And they certainly play a major part in decisions that you make in any office that you're elected to. But you just can't wear it.
Well, yeah, but there's people.
Except in a couple of districts here. But not
But
most of them.
but unfortunately, what that does is everybody, when does it become faking and when is it just good marketing, right? Like it's tough. It's a gray area. It's
Yeah,
tough.
it is. I'm not on anymore, right?
Well, thanks for joining us for another episode of The Peak. I hope that you get inspired to do something. Maybe it's in government and politics. Maybe it's in, faith, reaching out to your community, faith and family. Maybe it's in education. Maybe it's in media. Maybe it's in business. You know what? Do something. Do something. Make an impact. Don't be passive. This is where we live. And I hope that you're one of those 23%. If you live in the municipal Colorado Springs, who voted. I hope that you're one of those people. But what I really need to ask you overall is get involved. Do something. It might be just in your family. It might be just in your neighborhood. But what's my part? Well, among other things, putting out a voter guide and coming on the radio here 4 days a week in order to bring you hopefully a good time that you enjoy being on the show, but information and meeting people who inspire you to do that. We are here Monday through Thursday, 3 to 4 p.m. So we're back tomorrow, Faith and Family Wednesday. Actually, we're guest hosts because I'm more giving up the chair here because that's our vision of citizen journalism. And Jordan Baldwin of First Amendment Media and our chief investigative citizen journalist here at The Peak is going to be covering on Faith and Family Wednesday this HB 25-1312 legal protections for transgender individuals. And we're hoping, as long as he can get out of session, call in from State Rep Scott Bottoms in order to talk about what's going up there under the Gold Dome, which honestly is getting pretty scary. We have Larry Elder coming up next here on The Answer, and we ask you to check out, we have over 200 podcasts on our website, which is thepeak.news. Also, if you'd like to attend our Passover Seder, the one that I host and my family does, we're having that at the Pinery on April 17th, but the cutoff date is just a couple days from now, April 10th. So make sure to go to thepeak.news/events and sign up right away. The Peak, we say the quiet stuff out loud, and with your help, we're saying it even louder for such a time as this. Shalom. Okay.
Good.
Thank you.